Welcome. This is Chris Hill. I'm the board chair and CEO of Sindy XR, and welcome to our Wellness Journey interview series. And today, I'm very happy, quite excited actually, to have Jordan Harmon on the call. Jordan and I have known each other now for a couple of years. Jordan is truly a transformative healthcare executive we've had the pleasure of knowing. He's a strong advocate for affordable care, but also for the smart use of innovation, be it technology and various things that we'll talk about today on the interview series. His experience includes driving strategic growth for world-class global organizations such as the Hospital for Special Surgery in New York. He's currently the Senior Vice President and Chief Innovation and Products Officer for Catholic Health. He's also a truly valued advisor to myself and to Sindy XR. Welcome, Jordan, to the interview series.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks for the kind words too. Appreciate it.
Well, they're well deserved. So, Jordan, one of the things that I know we talked a little bit offline, and I'm glad to do it now as part of the interview series. In a post-pandemic world, just as we're trying to understand what does life look like, where, for example, telehealth is sort of perhaps the first way and the primary way that you start meeting with some of your primary care or even specialty doctors. So now that we've got telehealth, all of a sudden now we're dealing with things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, particularly from a patient-centric approach, which is, I know, something that you're very passionate about. When we look into the future here with the crystal ball, a little fuzzy, but what does AI and machine learning look like in terms of changing the way patients engage with healthcare organizations from your perspective?
So it's a great question. I spent a lot of time on this, thinking about this. I think, a lot of organizations, healthcare or not, use the word AI, and have been using the words AI for quite some time. I'm not sure everybody knows exactly what it means. So I think we first have to make sure that we've got an understanding of the definition. And much of what I think is out in the world is really kind of like improved algorithms and potential machine learning and things like that. And that's okay. But we really haven't gotten to the point where there's a clear line of sight for the analytics making decisions based on new and historical information. So that's sort of new. But I would say I group them into two buckets. So one is really your administrative functions, and that's sort of the back office pipeline and piping within a healthcare organization. So it's things like revenue cycle, credentialing, tasks. That authorizations are another big focus area right now for AI and those organizations that are creating tools around it to really remove the burden and barrier for healthcare administration. The second bucket is what you mentioned, and it's really, really important. It's the clinical decision making and the improvement in improving quality. And I think we've got some things now in that space, and that's the space that I'm super interested and excited about, because we really haven't harnessed the amount of data that healthcare has to be able to make informed decisions about how to augment and support clinical decision making. And I give you an example. So one, the first place that everybody started in this was around radiology. A number of years ago, HSS founded a company called we founded a company that was based on images that we used internally, and then identified fractures on X-rays and other types of images, and can read better than most radiologists in identifying those fractures. So that's something that many have done. There's a couple companies out there now. Imagen is the company I was referring to, that spun out of HSS. But I think more importantly, are there ways that we can connect data sources that really haven't been sort of identified and connected before? So one of the past initiatives that we worked on at HSS was really focusing on robotic surgery. So helping connect sort of the robotic data, the technical data that sits on a hard drive, with clinical data such as their patient-reported outcome measures, and really figuring out how to drive better quality and outcomes intraoperatively for surgeons who may not be doing a ton of cases and may want to understand and learn from others who are doing a particular type of procedure. And so that could potentially, improve the way that we care for patients. So I think like those are two examples in the clinical space, and I think there's just a ton more to do there because we really haven't connected the data sources and really validated whether those things can be implemented in a real-time setting.
It makes a lot of sense. And I know some of the benefits of what you just mentioned, Jordan, in the longer term may be different, but in the short to medium term, do you see that some of that investment, be it in radiology or various technologies that you suggested, is it primarily a benefit to have better efficacy and accuracy of the diagnosis? Is there a primary benefit perhaps in lowering costs and then maybe even freeing up time for the physician or the specialist to do other things? What do you see as the primary benefit in the short to medium term?
Well, I think again, depends on the bucket. I think the bucket of the administrative tasks, I mean, one of the things that has been really, in the last 6 to 12, even beyond that, a lot of organizations were focused on, you know, charting, note taking for physicians that will, in essence, save them time in their day, so they're not spending the last 2 hours, you know, putting their notes in. It's doing it in real time and doing it with high accuracy and getting the H&P in correctly. Like those are things that are going to save time. Um, and that's great because we need those types of things in order to retain great physicians and allow them to operate at the top of their license. I think in the clinical quality bucket, it's sort of been mixed. I think, a lot of, and this is the challenge with some of the earlier stage stuff right now, is that they don't really have a value proposition around improving quality. So I think the ultimate goal should be, if you're not improving quality, you have to be solving a health system problem. You have to be solving a clinician problem in some particular way, whether it be like helping reimburse better or saving time, like I mentioned before. But I think the ultimate is improving quality in some particular way, identifying, those something more accurately, diagnosing more accurately, helping physicians make better decisions based on the information that they have at hand. I mean, one of the things that's super challenging for any of us is retaining and understanding the latest research in the field. So how do you curate that and then populate it and make it available when somebody needs it most? Like that's a huge effort that can really drive quality,
Absolutely. And when we talk about quality, I think one of the sort of the elephant in the room a little bit when we talk about, be it using telehealth, using AI, getting better data in order to make better decisions on a quicker basis, as you suggested, that the other end of that equation, I think that we hear a lot from patients is that, does that mean that I'll have more quality time or better sort of engagement with my physician? Right? Because even things like telehealth, well, there's some benefit of that where they don't have to go drive to the doctor's office, but we hear, and certainly Sindy XR hears a lot while we deal with a lot of medical organizations and do surveys, that there seems to be the other end of the spectrum seems to be wanting, meaning I want to have a more substantive discussion and not be rushed around a little bit by my health professional. Do you have any hope that some of the applications of this technology will indeed free up physicians or their assistants to have a better engagement with their patient base?
Yeah, I think, the way I think virtual is certainly a great part in that. And I think if you get to the in-person space, I was talking to somebody recently, not where I am today, but a different location, different place, and they said that one of their patients told them that because of the AI tool and the augmented, note taking, et cetera, it was the first time the patient had said that they had seen the doctor's face. They had always they go at regularly, and they had always looked at the doctor's back. And so it was the first time the doctor was looking at them, face to face. So I think that's like really important to think about because people, um, when you sit down and you get recommendations or you're having a hard conversation, um, it's important to have that direct dialogue. And so like people are generally more likely to take on the recommendations and the things they need to do if the person's looking at them in the eye. So I think, yeah, I think this kind of technology definitely helps support that, make these interactions more meaningful, and then hopefully drive. When I say quality, I mean what I mean by that is if you have some sort of disease or diagnosis, you're recovering faster, with higher, quality of life, at a potential lower cost. Those kind of things. That's the way I think of quality because, um, we could talk about all the metrics that we have in healthcare to define that, but at the end of the day, somebody really needs to feel that. So I think yes, I think those tools can definitely help.
I know you've been a passionate advocate for innovative ways of achieving affordability in healthcare. You mentioned a little bit of that just a second ago. What do you see as some of the hope for a more affordable healthcare? What are some of the trends, be it governmental, business, industry wide, that gives you hope that there will be a better affordable healthcare over the next decade or so?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a tough question. We've um, through some of the work a few years ago that we did at an organization that I was part of and still advise today called Cost of Care. We did a number of research around, studies around this and did work groups around this, and the work continues with early trainees in this space. And I think like um, I think the challenge is like affordability means different things to different people. So like what's affordable to me may be different than what's affordable for you. And I think like what we need to do is have conversations related to what's reasonable for somebody. So if I've always believed that you can tell somebody, what to do, you can prescribe a drug, but if the drug is out of reach from a cost perspective, like it's not going to really, it doesn't matter. So I think like the way that I think we've shifted the conversation now is rather than just focus on like cost and affordability for health systems, like really shifting that conversation to like what is affordable for the patient sitting in front of you, the consumer that's actually like getting the care. And there's ways that we can reduce out of pocket costs, co-payments, co-insurance, etc., and make sure that those things get covered. Some of that is already happening. We can talk about the number of examples that happen in the drug space as of late. So I think those kind of things and those efforts I'm super supportive of, and I think even some of the digital and technology that we have is really helping with that and some of the transparency efforts that have gone on in recent years. So I'm hopeful.
Well, we can hear that, and I know you've been very supportive of and really helping motivate Sindy XR as we've been looking to figure out how we can help them between the doctor's visits, be it telehealth, virtual reality, or in person and group therapy. But in looking at some other trends, as you put your futurist hat on a little bit, one of the things I love about you, Jordan, is you can both be tactical but also strategic. So maybe put your strategic futurist hat on a little bit. Are there other trends around patient engagement? Any companies that you care to mention that are helping you give even more hope that there'll be more patient engagement as we go forward into the next 1 or 2 or 3 years or so?
Yeah, I mean, I think patient engagement is huge, and being able to like meet people where they are is also really important. So like I think a couple things. So one, like I'm particularly interested in areas of like um I'll come back to engagement, but I think like I love pharmacogenetics, right? So I think like being able to, people called it precision medicine like 15, 20 years ago. I don't really know what precision medicine means, but I think it's like figuring out like somebody's personal health and capabilities and matching the treatment and the drug, right? So pharmacogenetics do some of that where you're saying, okay, we know that Jordan isn't able to metabolize this in the same way that someone else is. And so we should think about how to prescribe him a different drug or be more targeted because he certainly isn't going to respond the same way. So I think that's like really exciting and really important work because it helps with the cost and the affordability, but it also helps with outcomes because you didn't try 15 different drugs or options beforehand. You went to the thing that based on genetic testing that works. And we have a ton of work I think to do in that space because we don't know. I think there's a lot of work that has been done. I think it's exciting to find out, what is able to be prescribed in treatment form today, but there's a lot more to do. I think like everybody talks about AI, so we already talked about that. I think that's certainly an interesting area, and the use cases around that and improving experience. And I think pulling together information across somebody's like preventative, and this is like, again, this is, I feel like a broken record in some ways, because it's like preventative health and all the things that we know we should be doing so someone doesn't end up in the hospital, but creating incentives in the broader landscape around that. So if we don't incentivize health systems providers and the organizations that are actually delivering this stuff to do it, it's going to be very difficult for them to change. It's like, turning the ship, turning a Titanic ship. It's very tough to move quickly on that. So I think those kind of regulatory and more reimbursement and incentives shifts are they're starting, and I think that they'll continue. So I like those things, and being able to identify specific needs of individual people, using some of the AI that we've got out there is also one that I'm excited about. So we'll see.
Well, that is exciting. You talk about a practical application of AI to be able to, apply a treatment plan that's very individualized based on perhaps wearable data or various things, the mashing up, if you will, of the technology of wearables, AI, plus a personalized health plan. That does really give me excitement and hope, and I'm sure we'll see some of that given how fast technology such as AI is happening, machine learning. The final question I have for you, Jordan, again, I always appreciate your taking the human approach to your things. You've been on you've been on various sides of the table here, particularly with large medical institutions like HSS. What is the role for individual advocacy of some of the things you've talked about? In other words, some of it's going to come from on high. It could be coming from a governmental or industry association. It could be coming from a medical. What is the role of the individual consumer, if I should use that term in healthcare, to be advocate for this type of innovation? Is there perhaps a groundswell to say, look, we need a better approach from a patient perspective? What is their role to drive some of this change? And do they have the opportunity to do so?
You mean sort of like from a consumer sort of saying, we've had enough, we want to be able to use data in a different way, or think differently, or whatever, right?
That's exactly right. It's change. It's always interesting to see where the transformation comes from. Does it come from the government? Does it come from the industry? Does it come from the economics coming from the medical institutions? And does it come from patients demanding better, frankly? And the answer, of course, it's a combination. But what is the role of the patients to start demanding some change here?
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I think it has to be all three, because it's almost like there's schools of thought, and there's a lot of publications around this. Like you'll hear some people say that the internal system can't change because of the regulation and the policies related to healthcare. I personally don't buy that we can't change, but I do think that like policy certainly has a role. So for example, like like a good example is hospital transparency on pricing, and whether you like the policy or not, we can get into that. That's a separate topic of discussion. But regardless of what you think of it, it pushed the policy and governmental regulation pushed hospitals to be transparent, and then started to push harder on making those prices available to consumers in a machine readable format, and even more easy to read formats now. And people didn't like it, hospitals didn't like it, and we thought, how would we ever be competitive on pricing and rates if we publish those things? But I think because it's uncomfortable, that push, transparency around that wouldn't have happened. Like there's no hospital system that's going to just volunteer to do that on their own when no one else is forced to do it. So like that's a good example of like where policy has to make that change, because if you don't, you're not going to see individual health systems and providers doing it. Separately though, I think to your point, consumers can vote with their feet in most industries, and that's true in healthcare too. And you start to see it in sort of the healthcare retail environment. So I was at CityMD for a year, urgent care provider in the Northeast, one of the largest, 120 when I was there, probably well over 200 sites now. Um, you had to think about what is the consumer experience. We wanted a certain amount of wait time. We didn't want people to sit in the exam room. We wanted to get them in and out. We wanted to have beautiful, clean areas for people to sit. We wanted our physicians to be well trained. We wanted so like all of those things were well thought through, primarily because the competition was fierce in that particular space, and people could choose to vote with their feet. And we wanted them to come into our sites because we provided better care, and frankly, it was a revenue generating opportunity for us. So I think the more that we have those kind of things built into the system, with proper guardrails, right? Because you can't give. I don't think that it's. I don't think we're in a place where we can completely unleash the system to uh, be consumer driven, like maybe other industries. But I think there's certainly areas. That's one, like retail environments in healthcare, and I think certain other kind of preventative work you're certainly seeing, like concierge medicine is sort of taken on many different forms. People are willing to pay out of pocket to not have to wait to get to their provider, to see them anytime, to spend more time with their provider. They're willing to pay for that out of pocket. So I think that's going to continue, and that'll really lead us down a path of hopefully not being the haves and the have-nots around those things, but actually like allowing us to, you know, the top, rising tide raises all boats, right? So like being able to provide that kind of service to more and more people.
The term concierge medicine comes up a lot. It'd be interesting to see the marriage between that and perhaps AI and lower healthcare costs. We'll see how that goes. I want to say thank you, Jordan. Obviously, your insights very interesting. Your leadership in the industry noted, and your advisory to Sindy XR appreciated. Thank you for your time,
Thank you.
sir.
Yeah, thank you.